Thank you, Robin.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out this morning. Appreciate that. And look, you're the nicest looking crowd I've had all morning.
All morning. Okay.
Suck up, yeah. Anyway, a little bit about me, first of all. I grew up in Rowley, Iowa, tiny little town, tinier than most of your little towns up here. It's never reached 300 people, okay? That's how tiny it is. Buchanan County is where all the TV towers are at for Cedar Rapids and Waterloo, so like halfway between, okay? I dreamt that I wanted to be the next Harmon Killebrew in Little League, and figured out fairly quickly the only two things we had in common were we were both slow, and we both struck out a lot. So, other than that, not much going for me there. So I kind of gave up on Little League baseball, collected baseball cards instead. I've always loved history, so reading history books and learning about some of the old baseball players, including Babe Ruth. I graduated from Iowa Central in Fort Dodge and from UNI, communications degree, worked in broadcasting and cable for like 11 years, got fired from a few radio stations. Somebody saw me yesterday, he was laughing because the same thing had happened with him. Not a stable career. I got a good friend who said radio in the 70s is like $100 a week and all the records you could steal. And that's pretty much true. Wife and I owned a mobile DJ service for almost 25 years called Complete Music in Des Moines, and we became the biggest DJ service in Des Moines and central Iowa. We were able to do up to 10 events at once, and it was insane, and we thank you, Lord, finally got it sold in 2013. We'd done about 7,000 events, so that's where all this gray hair came from. I'm retired now, joyfully, and live in Pleasant Hill, Iowa, just outside of Des Moines. If you're going into the fair off of Highway 65, then you'll drive right through Pleasant Hill, so wave if you're going through, okay? Either going to the fair or going to the landfill. It's like east-west through Pleasant Hill. It's a good bedroom community, I gotta say. I love camping, history, reading, and spend time with my grandkids. They all live close by. Got 4 of them right now, and another one due in a month. A little boy, last name Grover, not Bainter like my other 2 grandsons. But I love coming out and doing this, meeting people and hearing you guys' stories too. So feel free to ask any questions as I'm going along, and let's have some fun. So I've heard that there are like 4 million books published every year now. With AI, it's making it really easy for people. I even read that just the other day that Amazon is limiting authors now to 3 submissions for books per day for a single author. So does that tell you that there's a lot of crappy stuff being written and thrown out there? So anyway, knowing there's 4 million books out there a year, you guys are here to hear about mine. I don't take that for granted. I really appreciate that, so thank you very much. Yeah, books for sale, $20. Cash, check, Venmo, credit card. Take care of that stuff later. Now, there are only about 230 Iowa natives that have made it to the major leagues. There's 7 that are in the Hall of Fame. And talk first about a couple. This is like a George theme to start off, okay? This is a guy from small town Iowa named Bob Locker, and he was from George, Iowa, okay? Anybody know him or hear of him when he was playing up here?
I know where George, Iowa is.
I remember him playing.
Okay. I drove past George on the way over here from Sioux Center and waved to George, so it's like, what's up, Bob Locker? You know, he's not around anymore. He passed away in 2022 in Bozeman, Montana. But he graduated from George High School and from Iowa State, sinker ball pitcher, and primarily he never started a major league game, but we played for 10 years in the majors, relief pitcher for the White Sox, and he was like their most frequently used reliever in the late 60s and early 70s. He went to Oakland in the early 70s and pitched in the 1972 World Series, and then playing for the Cubs for a brief while, went back to Oakland briefly, and then he got traded back to the Cubs for the end of his career for Billy Williams. I forgot that Billy Williams played for Oakland, but he got traded to Oakland for Bob Locker, so that's Bob's big claim to fame right there, maybe. All right, our next George. There we go. George Pipgrass. Have you ever heard of him? He was from Ida Grove, and that picture belongs to a guy named John Leppa, and he's a friend of mine. If you want to know anything at all about baseball, in Iowa especially, or in general, old baseball, John's the guy to talk with, and he's actually having me photograph his whole collection. Kind of intimidating. He's got some very cool stuff. Babe Ruth autographed baseball. He's got a 1956 bat, or New York Yankees everybody that played in the World Series, 56 for the Yankees. So autographed by Mantle and Maris and Berra and Whitey and all of those guys. And I've seen that. And it's like, holding the Holy Grail, kind of, you know. But, excuse me. Pipgrass was a Yankee pitcher, born in Ida Grove, 1899. Served in World War I, then got drafted by the Yankees. He was a starter for the Yankees, went 10-3, won a game in the World Series in 27 for the Yankees. And the coolest game that he was involved with probably was in the 1932 World Series. He was starting pitcher against the Cubs in Game 3. And that's the legendary game where Babe Ruth's called shot. So there are two different stories about that. Some people say that Babe was just getting tired of getting taunted at by the Cubs fans, so he's like pointing at him and telling him to shut up, kind of. And other people say that he was pointing out to right center field and wound up hitting a home run out there. And George Pipgrass swore to his dying day that Babe called that shot. That wasn't him just pointing at the crowd, so that was pretty cool. Pipgrass retired in 1935, wanted to become an umpire for whatever reason, worked his way up to the major leagues, and in a game in 1946, he ejected 17 players. White Sox and the St. Louis Browns, and died in 1986. His brother Ed also played very briefly 5 games for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1932. All right, there's our favorite small town Iowan, Bob Feller. I had a chance to meet him at a card show before he died, obviously. In 2010 is when he passed, but he was an American hero, and he played, during World War II, he was there for 4 years, and was kind of wondering what kind of career he might have had, and he had no regrets over, doing his duty, patriotic duty, and career was 266 and 162, had 3 no-hitters, call him the heater from Van Meter, and some people said he could be kind of a prickly guy if you met him, but I had a really nice visit with him. My son was there, and cool guy. All right, now it's really cool when guys from small town Iowa make it to the majors, but what's even cooler is when big time major league ball players come to small town Iowa. That's what we're going to talk about today. Babe Ruth did that in 1922. Here's the story. First of all, in 2022, ESPN named Babe Ruth as the greatest baseball player of all time. And I tend to agree with that. The man could pitch, obviously a great hitter, he really changed the dynamics of the game. If you read into baseball history, before that, it was kind of like Ty Cobb style of game. It was called, what was it called? The dead ball era. The balls weren't wound as tight as they were when after Babe started playing and hitting home runs. The balls were softer. They wouldn't fly as far. And so they're a lot more dependent on small ball, where you're just trying to slap singles, steal a base, hit and run, all of that. And when when Babe came along, Ty Cobb kind of hated Babe for ruining his game, as Ty Cobb said. But anyway, think about it, Babe is the only athlete from a century ago that we still talk about today. Talking about Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani, compare him compared to Babe sometimes. But you never hear that about any other athletes from 100 years ago. You don't hear about Bill Tilden anymore, or Bobby Jones, or Gene Tunney, do you? But we hear about Babe still. And he quit playing about 90 years ago and passed away in 1948, so 80 years ago he's been gone. And only 53 years old too when he passed away. I found out a lot about Babe Ruth from this book. Bill Jenkinson, fun name to say, he wrote a book called The Year Babe Ruth Hit 104 Home Runs. And in that book, he cataloged every home run that Babe hit, regular season, World Series, barnstorming, exhibition games. And I found out in that book that Babe actually played in Iowa 4 different times. And in 1922, which is when I'll be talking about, in 26, he played in Des Moines, hit 3 home runs there. He only did that one time in the regular season. He did it twice in the World Series, both times against the Cardinals, which is kind of cool. But I think he had 714 career home runs, and only one time he hit 3 in a game, so pretty crazy. So yeah, 22, 26 came to Iowa, 27 and 28, and he was touring with Lou Gehrig for some of those later ones. And so Babe would wear, his uniform would say Bustin' Babes on it, and Lou Gehrig's was the Larapin Lou's was the name of his team. So now back in the day, ball players didn't make as much money as they do today. Shocker to all of you, I know. So a lot of them needed off-season income, and so they had jobs back home, whether they were selling insurance or farming or whatever. But a lot of guys went barnstorming after the season, so they would go around and hook up with local teams for a little extra money, and they liked doing that because that wasn't subject to ownership control, because owners are kind of tight-fisted. So even during the season sometimes, like if they were going from Cincinnati to Pittsburgh and there was, I don't know, random city, Akron, halfway between, they would get hold of some local team in Akron and make a couple bucks playing and doing that to make money. Well, now Babe Ruth spent money quicker than he made it. He would have worked real well in this modern era, right, with credit cards. I can't imagine him with a credit card. But so he was all about barnstorming too. He did love playing ball and loved playing with and against black players. Anybody that was wanting to play ball, he was pretty much there for it. Oh yeah, plus the money, especially that. And I think maybe part of that too was making up for lost time. He grew up in extreme poverty. Has anybody been to Camden Yards, Baltimore before? Have you? I want to go there sometime. It's a pretty cool area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Babe Ruth house too. I went to.
Okay. Is that a museum? Or?
It's the original house. It's a little tiny 2-story house. It's right by Camden Yards.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, it sounded like you moved around a lot back then too, so pretty tragic upbringing. In that area, it was a lot nastier 100 years ago than it was when you were there. I know that because at the time there was a hill and there was a stockyard up there. They would dump all of their crap into this little creek that trickled through that area. And, you know, blood and guts and all the yuckies. There was also a B&O railroad yard right there in that area. Their coal yard and a lot of noise, dusty. They called that area Pigtown back in the day. Infant mortality rate there was 10% in 1890. That's how bad it was. In 1895, George Herman Ruth was born. His parents were kind of abusive, not very good parents. Dad ran bars. Sometimes he'd be working 20 hours a day. Mom, named Catherine, she gave birth to 8 kids and only 2 of them survived childhood. So tragic. It was Babe and his sister. And she dealt with some severe mental illness, so she was pretty much unfit to be a good mother, not have a relationship really with young George. Now Big George eventually divorced her on the grounds of alcoholism and adultery. And then he got possession of the kids too, which is pretty remarkable to me that she must have been pretty messed up for a man to have possession of the kids, especially in the 1890s. Well, little George, what was he up to? 7 years old, kind of became a hellraiser. Big George didn't have much time to keep an eye on him, so age 7 he was skipping school, chewing tobacco, shoplifting, throwing rocks at delivery men, and he's probably nipping some whiskey is my guess. I don't know. And I thought my son was a challenge, but no, he's an angel compared to Babe. Anyway, Babe's father got a hold of St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys, it was called, and kind of a Catholic reform school, basically. There was a guy there named Brother Matthias who took young George under his wing and taught him how to straighten up and fly right, more or less, and taught him baseball. And said this Brother Matthias was so strong that he would hit fungos, throw it up and just hit it with one hand, and pretty powerful guy. But we can thank Brother Matthias for Babe Ruth. Here's a picture of him with his team at St. Mary's. There in the upper left-hand corner. Yeah, got catcher's mitt, doesn't he? So, he wound up becoming a really good left-handed pitcher. And then in 1914, he signed a $500 contract, or $600 rather, with the minor league Baltimore Orioles. And that's where he got his nickname Babe, because it's round moon face. So, kind of carried that with him for the rest of his life. Now, there's a few months later, Orioles owner Jack Dunn sold Babe to the Boston Red Sox, made his major league debut that fall in 1914. He was a brilliant major league pitcher. He won 2/3 of his games. His career record was 94-46, and pitching in the World Series for the Red Sox in 1916 and 1918, he threw 30 consecutive scoreless innings. And that was against the Brooklyn Robins and the Chicago Cubs. His last year as a pitcher full-time was in 1919. He went 9-5 in 19 games, and when he wasn't pitching, he was playing in the outfield, like Shohei, and was hitting some home runs. In 1919, he set a new single-season home run record with 29 home runs, okay? And that was actually his last season with the Red Sox. Anybody else remember what happened in baseball in 1919? Yeah, the Black Sox, yes. Chicago White Sox were heavily favored to win the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds, and some of the White Sox players were approached by gamblers to throw the series, and that's what wound up happening. Then some of those guys didn't even get paid off anything like they were supposed to. 8 of them were accused of being involved with that, and despite strong evidence, they were actually acquitted by a Chicago jury, which I didn't know until I started researching this. They were acquitted in 1921, probably because the Chicago jury hated Charles Comiskey, who owned the White Sox, and didn't pay his players very well, which is why they were so approachable to gamblers, okay? So they thought that they were home free. But after the Black Sox scandal, as it became known, the owners wanted to protect their financial investment and clean up the game, and they hired a man named Kennesaw Mountain Landis to be baseball's first commissioner. And he was pretty much a hardcore authoritarian. Did not suffer fools gladly. He was one of those guys who kept blacks from playing Major League Baseball. That never happened until he died. And the first thing he did was banish all of those 8 players from baseball for life. So that's where we get Shoeless Joe Jackson's story, and Field of Dreams and all that enters into it. We'll get back to Landis in a minute. I'm not done with him. Anyway, in January 1920, Red Sox fans were shocked when Red Sox owner Harry Frazee sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees. Now, Harry Frazee was a Broadway producer, and every time he needed money for some of his productions, he would sell his players. And the Yankees had deeper pockets than Frazee did. Frazee, I don't know. And so they were willing buyers, and so that's how they bought Babe Ruth. Babe had wanted $20,000 from Harry for 1920 season, and Frazee was only offering $10,000. Well, the Yankees were happy to pay him $20,000, and that paid off really well for him. Because in 1920, Babe hit 54 home runs, doubling almost what he had set before of 29 home runs for all-time most in a season. And then in 1921, might have had his best season ever. Hit 378, hit 59 home runs, and led the Yankees to the World Series for the first time. And that was I think he played in 10 World Series for the Yankees. And they lost, though, to the New York Giants in 1920, or 21 rather. And then after the season, Ruth and his fellow outfielder and drinking buddy, Bob Meusel, said that they were going to go barnstorming in the Northeast. And that hadn't really been an issue, even though in 1914 there had been a rule that supposedly prohibited World Series players from doing any barnstorming after the season. It had not really been enforced. Babe had done that after he played for the Red Sox in the World Series. Nobody gave a crap about it. But who's our new boss, guys? Landis. Was he a nice guy? No. He told those guys that they shouldn't barnstorm because it was against the rules. Well, Babe was like, I'm Babe freaking Ruth. You can't tell me what to do. And here's Landis over here. Oh, yes, I can. So you got 2 big egos, like a train crash. And after a couple of games, Ruth and Meusel, the heat kind of got to them, between Yankee management and Landis, and they called it off after just a couple of games. Well, Landis did not appreciate being upstaged by Babe Ruth, or his attempt to upstage him. Punishment was swift and severe. He took away their World Series bonus money, $5,200, which a lot of money in 1921. He also suspended both of those guys for the first 6 weeks of the coming season in 1922. And he did let him attend spring training though. And that's where this picture came from, and picture on the cover of my book. Now, if they were thinking that maybe Landis was gonna cut him some slack when he came down to spring training, that did not happen. And I look at that picture, and I'm just imagining what those guys are thinking. Look like they're kind of forced smiles, I think. And Landis looks like he's got talons. He's like gripping their triceps, and like, you better smile, you SOBs. Like, okay, here's your smile. And that, I know it reminds me of Montgomery Burns from The Simpsons, you know, kind of like that. Crusty looking, unfriendly man. Anyway, yeah, I just can't imagine what those guys were actually thinking. I'd love to talk with them about that. Anyway, after 6 weeks, mid-May, they finally got to start playing again, and Babe slumped early on. And not known for his maturity, shocker alert there, he was suspended several times during the 1922 season for arguing, throwing dirt at umpires. Can't do that, kids. And he even went into the stands to go after a heckler, apparently. So Landis met privately with Babe in Boston in the middle of the season and kind of helped. I think he was telling him too that he would reconsider that World Series barnstorming ban at that time. And anyway, after that, Babe kind of settled down and played, had a good season, even though he missed 42 games. They did make it back to the World Series again in 1922, and they lost once again to the New York Giants. They actually shared the Polo grounds with John McGraw and the Giants until 1923 when the Yankee Stadium was built. McGraw didn't like that too much because the Yankees would outdraw his New York Giants team, so that was kind of funny. Babe had a terrible World Series in 1922. Only hit 118 with 2 hits, and that was the only World Series he was in with the Yankees where he did not hit a home run too. Anyway, after the series, Landis had told them that they could go ahead and barnstorm, and that must have already been figured out because there were a lot of stops already scheduled for those guys right after the season. So just a couple of days after the World Series, the guys hopped on a train and headed west, and I like to think they were, back there, we're not there yet, here. That's where they headed off to. This is where you need a laser pointer just to aggravate kitties with the point. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, started off in Perry, Iowa, Lincoln, Omaha, up to Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, way up there. A fun story about Sleepy Eye. They came down to Sioux Falls, Sioux City, and then this is insane. Traveling by Bumpy, old dirty train, okay? They went from Sioux City all the way up to Deadwood, down to Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And I don't know what time they had to get up in the morning, but that must have been ridiculously early. 500 miles across Nebraska to play in Tarkio, Missouri, right there. And they played in Kansas City, Leavenworth, all the way down to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and Drumright, Oklahoma, up to Fort Scott and Pratt, Kansas, Pueblo, Colorado, and Denver, and they finished there in a snowstorm on October 28th. They played 19 games in 18 days, 8 states, traveling on bumpy trains. Babe said that kind of referred to the railroads as jerkwater railroads sometimes because they were so nasty, not real well maintained and bumpy. He said that sometimes it felt like they were traveling on square wheels too. So. And they were trying to sleep overnight on some of these trips too, and I can't imagine how well they slept. But anyway, yeah, that was 1,200 miles in 3 days from starting off in Sioux Falls and winding up in Tarkio. I can't imagine how insane that would be, let alone doing that today, you know, with a nice bus or even flying. That just seems exhausting to me. And on their tour, they faced some great Negro League players, some great small town pitching, especially in Pratt, Kansas. Hit some monster home runs, visited orphanages, and made some money for the American Legion, which had been newly formed right after World War I. And they created some lifelong memories for anybody that was lucky enough to have seen them play. They started on Friday the 13th of October in Perry, Iowa. And there's a picture of Babe with the Perry Ball Club. Meusel's on the left and the front there. Dallas County Fairgrounds is now located in Adel, but was in Perry at the time. If you're familiar with Perry, it's where the Hy-Vee store is at now, south side of town. Bob Meusel typically played with the visiting team. Babe would play with the home team. And I really love this picture. That's the one that had blown up. It's getting passed around maybe. With the Pelatown team, the Pella Meteors. And there's a couple of pictures. Well, yeah, we'll get to those guys in just a second. So it was kind of gusty winds and misty, not a great morning. And so that kind of kept out a lot of out-of-town people from coming to the game. But after lunch, still breezy. So there were dust devils on the field and stuff like that, but cleared off, wasn't raining. So they went ahead and played the game. Starting pitcher for Perry was Joe Edelman, and he had played for the Des Moines Boosters that season, went 2-5. And there were two guys that pitched for Pella, Wendy Zonderman and Paul Versteeg, or Versteeg. Somebody said it's pronounced Versteeg. We got some good Dutch people up here. Is it Versteeg or Versteeg? Two E's?
Versteeg.
Don't know. Go Versteeg.
We have a Versteeg here, but.
Okay, we'll go with Versteeg then.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. In the first inning, Edelman gave up a grand slam to Bob Meusel after loading bases. And there's big Bob. Bob was the fellow outfielder for Babe. It sounded like, depending on where the sun was at, Meusel would play left field or right field, and Babe would play the opposite corner because I guess he had more problems with the sunlight than Meusel did, so that was kind of cool. Babe tripled in the bottom of the first, drove in 2 runs, then he struck out his next time up. Before that strikeout pitch, Sec Taylor, who was the sports editor for the Des Moines Register, they don't write stuff like this anymore, guys. Sec Taylor reported that Versteeg, the Pella pitcher, quote, coughed on the ball before delivering it in a way that is not considered good etiquette in the best of baseball circles, okay? Spitball, right? And that had been outlawed 2 years earlier. Babe was not amused with that. His next time up, Sec Taylor wrote that, not to be outdone, the infant, as he called Babe, tried to infringe on the rules himself by stepping up on the pitches 8 or 10 feet before the pitch had a chance to break. That spit on it. And so I can't imagine throwing to Babe Ruth, let alone only 50 feet away instead of 60 feet away. Anyway, Ruth hit another triple. Oh, that's up. Got to see Babe striking out here first. I like to think that was the spitball that he struck out. I'm not sure. Came from the Register. Okay. So Babe did hit a triple. Lusty swing. Can you say lusty anymore? Paper? I don't know. I think that's kind of cool. Sec Taylor said that Bob Meusel could have caught it if he was in a hustling mood. Otherwise, he said that Meusel, every move that he makes is like a picture. And regarding Babe Ruth, he said that Babe moved with unbelievable speed for a man built like a giant above the waist, just like a normal human being in his legs. If you've seen video of Babe, it's kind of funny. It's got little chicken legs, kind of shuffle running around the thing, but big barrel-chested guy. And we kind of think of him as being fat and all that, but he really wasn't in his early days.
Did they even have fences back then?
They didn't in Perry. I think there was like a horse track there that they played on. Yeah, in my book I wrote a lot of people showed up there hoping and thinking that he was going to hit a ball that was going to roll all the way up to Ames, you know. That didn't quite happen. Pella did lose to Perry 12-4, and then they played a high school game, Perry High School against Jefferson after that baseball game. All right, the Perry chief said that the stars were photographed, interviewed, toasted, and made over. They shook hands with everyone, wrote their names on scorecards, and left Perry with the big end of the $1,055 in gate receipts. Now the players were guaranteed the first $2,000 of the gate, and the newly formed Perry American Legion had helped sponsor those guys coming. And I just imagine how sad that must have been for those guys who had, you know, not just sacrificed in the trenches in Europe, but also probably sacrificed out of their wallets a little bit to help bring these guys to town and not being able to raise any money for the Legion. The game, bizarre story here. The game was stopped briefly halfway through. It was a bizarre promotional stunt. There were cross-dressed men in blackface. They arrived to challenge the winning team, okay? Called themselves the Merry Minstrel Maids, and they were publicizing an event coming up the following week at Perry's Grand Theater. The Perry chief reported that one dusky damsel posed with Babe for a photo who seemed to enjoy it as much as she did. Now, beneath the small town shenanigans, there might have been a darker element here too. The KKK was popular in Iowa, central Iowa, in the 20s, and Perry was no exception. Many well-known and unrobed Klan members were in the audience cheering on the Catholic boys, Bob Meusel and Babe Ruth, and some of them may have even been involved in a cross burning that had happened at St. Patrick's Church in Perry at some time before. I don't know how long before these guys came, same year, whatever, but I know there was a cross burning there before those guys came. And Babe Ruth had actually visited that church at school prior to the game. A few years later, 1926, Perry hosted the largest Klan gathering ever in the history of Iowa. More than 5,000 Klan members showed up, had a big rally at the fairgrounds, and the theme, and I kid you not, was Make America Great Again.
There it is.
Figures.
History doesn't repeat, it rhymes, something like that, right? Okay, moving on to something a lot more fun. This is sleety, sleepy eye, Minnesota. After Perry, they played in Lincoln and Omaha, and all the way up to Minnesota. Sleepy eye, Minnesota. A couple of stories about that. The one that I like is the fact that, according to one paper, that they'd gotten there, it was cold, windy, 20 degrees, sleet, nasty. The guys went in their hotel room and were taking a nap, thinking the game was gonna be called, but somebody's pounding on the door. Hey, there's 500 people to come watch you play baseball. This was on a Monday afternoon. So they got dressed real quick and went out, and during the game, there was an 11-year-old boy named Len Youngman. He was playing outside of the ball field with some friends of his. He didn't have the money to get in there, or just taking a break from the game or whatever, but heard the crack of a bat, and a few seconds later there's this ball that's rolling right to him. Well, he picks it up and runs off with it. It was a Babe Ruth home run, and he got a chance to meet Babe after the game, and forgot to have him autograph the ball, apparently. So there was his grandson named Joel Youngman inherited that ball from his grandpa. And Joel Youngman contacted the Sleepy Eye Historical Society to tell them the story about the ball and his grandpa. He told him his grandpa was still alive. This is in 2016. And there were 3 Sleepy Eye historians, baseball historians, that wanted to go up and meet Len Youngman. And they got hold of a guy from KARE TV in the Twin Cities named Blake Huppert. And Blake Huppert went up there with them and did a really cool documentary story about that. And they went, so Sleepy Eye to Virginia, Minnesota is like 5 hours up in the Iron Range country, if you've ever been up there. I'm on the way to the Boundary Waters. So sharp and sassy at 105 years old, Len Youngman said, "I can't believe anybody would drive 5 hours just for a damn ball." You know, teasing, of course. Len said that, forgot to have Babe sign the ball, but he did get to meet him. And a photo from that frigid day in Sleepy Eye shows Bob and Babe. Don't they look really excited to be there? Like they'd rather hang with Judge Landis than be there. And I like how Babe's missing a button on his sweater too. So, but yeah, so there's a couple dozen people gathered around them. And if you look close, right there, little boy in between those guys. Guess who that was? That was Len Youngman. Okay, 11-year-old Len Youngman. And I say he was photobombing the Bronx Bombers. And there's Len at age 105 holding that home run ball. He wound up passing away, 107 years old, 2 years after that in 2018. And it was on the 96th anniversary of that Sleepy Eye baseball game. So that was pretty cool. I will tell you too, you guys already know about Babe Ruth come to Spencer, right? So maybe you guys can tell me too. I copied this out of Iowa History magazine, so got to give those guys credit. I don't know what year that came out, but John Skipper was the author rather. Says baseball has a rich history in Clay County dating back more than a century. Through the years, men like John Hart was a Spencer car dealer and a pretty good ball player back in his day, donated thousands of dollars to youth baseball programs in the 40s and the 50s. Each summer, high school, American Legion, and semi-pro teams allowed young players to develop their skills in Spencer. Folks in Clay County consider Jim Fanning as one of their own. Driving over here on Highway 18, forgot which town, they'll kind of blend together after a while, but they got Jim Fanning Field in Hartley, okay.
You grew up in Moneta, you think your town was small.
Yes, right.
Yeah, how big is Moneta now?
3 houses.
Non-existent
Maybe.
almost.
Yeah, less than 20 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's actually where he was from, according
Yeah.
to the article.
Suburb of Everly.
What's that?
Suburb of Everly, a very
Oh, there
small
we
town.
go.
Yeah.
The Everly Cattle Feeders too, I
Yeah.
love that name,
Yeah.
yeah. I think, didn't Audubon, that Audubon bulls, but I thought the girls, were they called the Bullettes, or am I making that up?
Yeah. Cattle feeder Eds, basketball.
Yeah.
Basketball, famous.
Oh, Everly with the Cattle Feederettes?
Yeah.
Well, the girls.
Girls, yeah.
They don't have the school anymore now either.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, it's fun driving across and doing, I graduated in 75, so it's like, I remember all those schools that had the 2 towns together, Hartley, Melvin. You see
Right.
one town, and I know that town that goes with that one, and now they're all like generic,
Try GTRA.
Yeah.
You know what that is? Grettinger Carroll, Ruth and Ayrshire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good luck, yeah.
Right, yeah. There's that one too that's got like 7 towns in it. I can't remember which one, but yeah.
Oh, that's Battle Creek and all those
Prim
schools.
Primgar.
Yeah.
Primgar has
7 different towns letters for the name.
Really?
For each person, yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
that's for the town,
Yeah.
for the town.
That's like dumping out alphabet soup if you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
the scores in the Friday paper or whatever. Anyway, Moneta, it's always cool too to hear how the names are pronounced, because you look at it on the map and you're like, well, how's that pronounced? But Moneta, so.
I think it's Monita.
Yeah.
Monita?
Yep,
Moneta.
yep.
I'll put a line thing over top of that. in case show up on a trivia show sometime. How's this pronounced? So anyway, Jim Fanning played school ball in Moneta and played 3 partial seasons for the Cubs in 1955 and 57. When his career was over, Fanning managed the Montreal Expos, has the distinction of being the skipper the only year that the Expos made it into the playoffs in 1981. Later served as the team's general manager. Fanning never forgot his Iowa roots and the weekends he spent playing ball in Clay County and the surrounding area. Moneta, where he played ball, had a population of less than 100 people. Well, it sounds like less than 10 people maybe.
That's right.
So he played American Legion ball in nearby Hart Lake. Okay, where his ball field's at now. He said one year we had 11 boys on the high school baseball team. We finished second in the state. Legion ball was real popular with the fans back in the day. He said that they drew big crowds every Sunday, maybe 200 or 300 people. And said if you wanted to rob a bank, that Sunday afternoon was the time to do it because everybody was at the ballpark. Legion ball also played part in what's perhaps the most memorable day in Clay County baseball history. The day the great New York Yankees slugger Babe Ruth came to town in 1948. The Ford Motor Company and American Legion Junior Baseball sent Ruth, who had been retired for 13 years, around America to encourage youth interest in baseball. And Clay County had a connection with Ruth in 2 ways. Hart, the car dealer, was involved with the Ford Motor Company, and also 2 decades before that, he'd actually played with Babe Ruth in an exhibition game. Hart was able to organize Babe Ruth Day in Spencer on June 22nd, 1948. Coming up on the, I can't do my math, why was I thinking that? The anniversary of that's coming up. One of the stops in the Ford Motor Company promotion. Doubleheader was arranged for the Spencer Cardinals semi-pro team, which Hart had started up several years earlier, and a junior Legion tournament was also planned. One thing that meant the most to me was when I played with his club in 1927, said Hart. It was an exhibition game against Des Moines. I played first and he pitched 3 innings. They hit 3 home runs and every time I was on base. The thing I remember most was he was just like a big kid. So Jim Fanning and the Ford guy and Babe Ruth. So pretty much it. Y'all got questions? Well, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today. She mentioned there's more donuts there?
There are. So apparently there wasn't really a box, because you said that Babe Ruth could he could step forward and still hit. So they didn't have that rule of the box and you have to
Well,
stay there. And,
yeah, they had the rule.
They did.
They had the
Trout
rule
line.
against spitballs too. That's why
Yeah,
they
big
would have
money.
done it otherwise. He was wanting to get back at that pitcher. Yes, yeah. No, it was against the rules for sure.
Okay.
So, anything else? Guys are quiet. This morning. Hello.
When did Hillerich and Bradsby come along with the bats? Because those bats, the old ones are really just like a big stick. Thick stick.
I don't know the date on that for sure, but I read that there was a team in Louisville. It was like a minor league team for its time, and I don't remember if it's considered one of the major league teams, Louisville, but
AAA,
there was,
AAA minor league. The current-
yeah, now they are,
Yeah.
But back in the day, briefly they were like a major league team, I think, maybe
Kind of.
90s, maybe something like that. But there was a guy who playing for the Louisville team and cracked his bat. And he went to this guy who made bats and said, hey, can you make me some bats? And the guy did, and that's kind of how the Louisville Slugger thing got started, was from that. I think it was a Hilrich or Rick, the other guy, that was the name of the guy that was the bat maker, and that all evolved into H&B and Louisville Slugger brand. So,
I think you can still go to that place and buy a bat too.
yeah,
Yeah, I've been there. You can
Have
get
ya?
custom bats and see all the guys that ever had their bats. So.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, somebody said he got to hold Mickey Mantle's bat when he was there. Yeah.
Ted Williams, whole deal.
Did you see Babe's bat?
Uh,
Well, they wouldn't have made his, I don't
they
think.
made models later, but
Yeah.
yeah.
He swung like a 5-pound bat, so it's like taking a fence post.
Yeah.
That's how powerful he was. And I can't imagine how, the power that he could generate with something that big. So yeah, it was cool that people did get to go see him. I think sometimes some of these smaller towns, even, a lot of people didn't show up. And in some of the bigger towns, like Kansas City, it was raining that day. Denver, it was snowing, stuff like that. And I'm like, well, why would people not go see Babe Ruth? But at the time, in 1922, he wasn't Babe Ruth quite yet. He still had 500 more home runs to hit in his major league career.
Sure.
And you think about, there's a cool concert coming to town, and today, you gotta, okay, how much disposable income do I have? Can I get a babysitter? Can I get off work? All of those things were going on at the same time back then too. So it's like, after thinking about that a little bit, I'm like, I could cut some people some slack for maybe not making that game, even though they might have wanted to.
You
So.
see pictures back in the 20s, 30s, everybody wore a hat and a suit and a tie.
I
I
know.
mean, come on.
Yeah.
Even like into the 60s, you see World Series, games, guys were all like, I can't imagine wearing a sport coat in
Right.
August, Cincinnati, St. Louis. Anyway, any other questions?
Alright. Well, thank you everyone for coming. We've got donuts. You can take a cup of coffee home with you if you like. And Tim has some books here, so if you're wanting to buy a book, go ahead. So thanks, Tim.
$20, yeah, cash, credit card, I can do Venmo, all that cool stuff. So, thank you, Robin. Support your public libraries, support public education, support the First Amendment, and just be nice to people. Just be nice to everybody.
Yes.
So.